Welcome to another episode of Metal Mastermind. Your host and co-host, I guess I'm both, right? Jason Stallworth, and also host and co-host
Ken Candelas.
What's up, dude? And we have a special guest again today.
Elizabeth de Deus.
Hey.
Yes. Can you hear the claps? We do snaps instead of claps, right? There we go.
I can't get away from y'all.
Can't get away from us. That'd be a good 80s ballad. Can't get away from y'all.
Yeah.
Awesome. So guys, today we got some very cool discussions coming up. We're going to talk about, from a vocal perspective and just performing in general, live versus in the studio, right? Because there's two different things. I mean, those are almost two completely separate talents and things you have to work on. And then we will wrap it up going over some of our favorite musicians, vocalists, guitarists, drummers, because you guys know Ken is an awesome metal drummer back there. So we're going to talk about that towards the end and, what makes them great. So Ellie, we'll just start it out with you. Just a quick rundown. Like, what are some of the core differences between singing live with a band or solo act versus being in the studio?
The first thing that comes to mind, I would say, is the adrenaline that you get on stage. You just get like so much from the crowd and from your bandmates around you. So that energy, I feel like, plays a huge part in your performance overall. And then trying to bring that same energy into the studio. And especially as a vocalist, you're kind of like confined in this little vocal booth, right? So sometimes it can be like a little difficult to do that. And you have to kind of figure out tips and tricks and just kind of like, mental tricks to kind of get yourself into that element.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, I get the adrenaline because you guys know I sing live acoustic solo shows, which is a little bit different from being in a full band. There is a different energy with a full band when people are there to see you versus being a solo act, where a lot of times places I play, I'm kind of background music, but still there's that adrenaline rush, getting ready for the show, setting up, performing and talking to people, that sort of thing. That's cool. And that's something that's really hard to replicate, like you said, in the studio. And that has a lot to do with your performance too, right? So, I mean, it would probably benefit you to try to get into that mindset. Hey, I'm playing live when you're in the studio so you can deliver that same type of performance. I mean, what are some of the things you do for that?
Like when I'm playing live?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like there's different challenges when you're trying to play live and then when you're in the studio. I feel like maybe they're polar opposite, challenges. And some people feel very natural in one setting versus another, or they feel very comfortable in both. Everybody's like different, especially when you're a beginner and you're still trying to like figure out your stage persona. And maybe the studio is a little bit more comfortable. It's a little more intimate. It kind of reminds you more of like practicing in your bedroom, that kind of thing, that privacy. So everyone really is like different. For me, like growing up, kind of like being on stage quite often, I found myself like, really trying to reach to get comfortable like in the studio. And in my early 20s, like I just remember like trying to like figure it out and taking a few like takes in the vocal booth until like I really kind of got that emotion across in my voice. And now I feel like I kind of got it down to like a good science that works for me. And it's something that I share with other people too, just like tips and tricks to feel more comfortable in the vocal booth. And I have a few of those for the stage as well, but yeah, they're both very different atmospheres.
Yeah, I kind of feel like older records were more like recording live performances in the studio.
Yeah, because everyone was playing at the same time. It wasn't like isolated really, right?
And there was like a technological difference too. It's like if you're going to record to tape, you kind of have to just get it right.
Yeah.
So I feel like with the amount of limited, chances of doing overdubs and stuff like that. I mean, like you were able to do overdubs, but it's like you had to be really, really careful about overdubs and made sure that they were in sync with the previous performances. Cause it's like, you can't just like splice a little bit of tape you know, you have to splice the whole thing. So
Totally. I feel like we're a lot more comfortable because of the technology that we have today. It's so easy just to take another take and you're not wasting physical material by doing so.
Right.
But still, you want to come to the studio just as prepared as if you only had one take to get it right. Because
Right.
there's just so much more that you need to add. That if you just don't know your parts too well, like the melody or the lyrics, if you don't really have that like ingrained in your brain, you won't have the opportunity to add that extra element that you need to make it sound like a fantastic take.
That's gold right there, because you're talking about something that is sort of this magical element to a performance which captivates an audience, right? But that can only ever be achieved if you are absolutely prepared to deliver. So that's a fantastic point, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and
So in other words,
excuses freestyle stuff, by the way, because that's a whole different vibe. But yeah, you know what I'm saying.
What we're saying, guys, is don't write your song in the studio. If you're going into the studio to record, be prepared. Don't like get there and say, "Oh, man, I forgot the lyrics," or "Oh, we haven't figured out this guitar part quite yet." Know all that stuff before you start, especially if you're paying, right? If you're going into a professional studio and you're paying for that. When you're home, it's a little different. But to your point, Ellie, and both Ken, you know, you want to know the material before you start recording in your home, because you can get into this circle to where you never finish anything. You're like, well, I don't quite know this yet. It could be better. And you just change it. And it could be better. You change it. And then 5 years goes by, still no single, no album, no nothing. So I think you have to be careful with the luxury that we have, because it's not expensive. Everybody's got an interface connected to their computer with monitors, and you can just keep recording and tracking as much as you possibly want. But you can run real fast, but not go anywhere, right? So I think it is important to nail your song down. Like, this is the song, then go in there and, you know, do your best to nail the performance as well.
Well, to be very clear about something, I think it's important to distinct about going to the studio and going to record your album versus being, let's say, at your home studio and composing your album.
Right.
Because those are two different types of like phases, right? We're talking about, okay, like you can absolutely be home and, you know, compose on your record. I think we all do that. But when you're like, okay, now it's time to achieve like the quality sound that I've been looking for this album. Like, I know what the songs are at this point. They're all written out. Now it's time to take it to the next level. Like, for example, like right now, like I have my drums back here, but I don't have any microphones to record them the way I want to just yet. So I have to still go to another studio to even execute that. But I can still absolutely write, you know, and I would rehearse and I would get myself ready and then take that next step. And that's that step that we're talking about, that we want to say, okay, how do you take this live performance aspect of being in the moment, being a captivating performer, all that juju, and putting that into your music and recording that and capturing that for, you know, the final take.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Sorry.
only thing to add to this, one more thing, is just like, I think it's just important to have a little bit of live experience, so that you are, you know, playing at your peak.
Yeah, I actually wrote like a couple notes on just some tricks to bring into the studio as a vocalist. I don't know if you guys want to hear that.
Absolutely.
I'll make it brief. Okay, cool. So yeah, just going into the studio and laying down some vocal tracks. Just like a couple tips to kind of bring with you so that you know you feel prepared. The first one, like, I guess some of them feel a little bit obvious, but I'll explain a little bit more why they're important. But the first one is memorizing your lyrics, but still have those lyrics printed out. So if you don't know your lyrics too well, you are using brain capacity by reading lyrics, and they won't come off. Like, there's always something that needs to kind of compensate. So if you're too busy like reading lyrics, then that emotion won't be there, or those little extra details that you want to add vocal technique can often go out the door when you're too focused on reading lyrics. So that's really important. Memorize your lyrics, but also have them printed out. And having 2 copies is great, especially if you have a vocal producer or other bandmates in there with you. Like, just have somebody outside of the vocal booth following along with you, so they know like where you're at in the song. And it's so much easier to kind of navigate, like, hey, let's take it from the top of this verse. It's right there and it's all labeled nicely. It just makes like the workflow go more efficiently. My other tip would be, for your copy of the lyrics, I would suggest making little symbols and marks to for you, so you know what kind of vocal technique and vocal registers you want to use in certain parts. So, for example, if there's like a line where I'm like, I want to sing this softly, I know that underlining that for me means sing this softly. So everything that's underlined in my lyrics, I know to sing that softly, or I'm growling this part, or I can write pronunciations, remember to sing this vowel long. So I'll spell it out like phonetically how I want to pronounce it when I sing it. So that's why those lyrics are important, to mark up your page and write those notes for you as a guide in the studio booth. And then my last tip would be to bring that element of performance into a small confined space like a vocal booth. So figure out what it is that you need to do. Take a minute to meditate, like, make sure that you eat well in the morning, eat a nice breakfast, and drink plenty of water, bring some hot tea with you. Do anything that's like meditative that will get you into that element so that you can feel very comfortable in the vocal booth. So those are my 3
Nice.
tips there.
Yeah, those are very good because they help to at least kind of clarify. Like, I can almost see myself being in the studio right there and then as a vocalist, just getting ready to do this performance. And that's a great tip. And it feels very, very well structured to me too, to kind of think of it in this way. It's almost like, did I check this off? Am I ready for today's performance kind of way? Because it's easily, being in the studio the day of can be very, very anxiety inducing.
Oh yeah, it's totally nerve-wracking.
So you're just like, oh my God.
Make sure you relax a little beforehand. You don't want to rush, or like get there late or something.
I'm glad you mentioned like meditation too, because meditating can be a very good way to just kind of take a step to, step back and just breathe for a second, because everything's going to be okay.
Oh yeah, I had an audio engineer that told me to run around the block 2 times and then get back in, because I needed that energy. So, anything that you can do to get into that element is helpful.
That's cool. I like that.
I love that. That's great. Yeah. I mean, that's really, I love the fact you said, yes, memorize your lyrics. That's important because you can focus on the performance and your brain's not focused on crap. What's that next line? But you also said, bring the lyrics with you and make the notes and all that. That's kind of like your security blankie, if you want to call it that, right? When you're in the studio.
Yeah. And then just like there, for you to mark up the page, just like, whatever you need in there.
Mm-hmm. That's gold. Perfect.
And this is also very interesting too, because now I'm thinking about it, in the sense of a live performance too, right? If we're going to go and do live, one thing that I've noticed is a lot of bands, and I think mostly because it's easier to do it this way, but most bands, when they rehearse a bit of music for a while, and then when it's new music, of course, and then they get into a live performance and they're like, okay, let's play for the audience and see how they feel about it. But I also think at the same time, it's a way for them to kind of test out how the energy from the whole band as a cohesive whole being on stage with that kind of song, that new song that they just created, feels. And that's a way to pay attention to how that's going to translate into the record as well. Because now you've got like this whole big sound system and it's all out there for the audience to hear. It's just a thing that I noticed here. I'm wondering, what are kind of some notes that, preparing for a live show, how would they be sort of, similar and a little different to, let's say, what you were doing in the studio? Because you mentioned a couple of really good things that I think are also translatable to live, but I think in some different capacity.
With the performance, it's not so much bringing lyrics with you and marking up a page. You don't really have anything in your hands. You don't want to be like staring at a set list on the floor that you wrote a small note on. You don't want to read lyrics off your hand. I did that once when I was like 19, and then I got really sweaty on stage because it was hot, and all of my lyrics got smeared on my hand, and I couldn't make out the words. So let's bring the same tip over to live performance. Memorize your lyrics. It was a new song at the time, so I just remember being like kind of freaked out that I wouldn't get the verse right. I just realized, okay, Zoom is doing weird things for me. Okay, cool. But yeah, like memorizing your lyrics, feeling very comfortable. I would even say like have that conversation. If it's a new song that you just wrote that week or something, have that like serious conversation with your band. Like, is this song ready for performance? And if it's one of those kind of shows where it's like more like laid back and fun, like let's just do it. This is a good way to, just kind of try it out. Then go for it if it's that vibe. But if it's something where you really want everything to be like polished and ready to go for a show, definitely like consider if a song is ready for your live set. Because, there might be some like mistakes or hiccups that you could go over in a few rehearsals, right? Versus on the stage. So yeah, memorizing your lyrics. That's a huge one that you just mentioned, because it almost, and I didn't even think about it this way too, but it's like, testing your new song live is also a great way to see whether or not it's ready to be recorded too. Yeah, like open mics and stuff. That's like what it's for, utilize that. Or just like, maybe more local gigs or smaller gigs or regular venues, those kind of things where you can kind of like play a little bit more. Like those are, good opportunities, because even then there's things that you can cover that you can't really do in a rehearsal space. Just having that audience there, that feedback there, it really is up to the band. But it's good to just have that conversation when there is a new song that you are performing. And I would say also like bringing that energy to the stage. I just, everyone's different with how they perform. Like everyone has a different kind of like stage persona. There's people that are a lot more like active and they really move around and they dance a lot, and it's more like hype music. And there's like more like slow, gloomy kind of like serious kind of music. So it really depends on that, and really understanding the vibe of your sound, understanding your audience and like matching that energy. So I guess I could bring that over from the studio tips, where taking that moment before your show to meditate and really like lock in to the, just getting all those elements in for your performance.
That's great. I like to clear the head, and those of you who are wondering about meditation, really all we're saying is just clear your mind. Don't let all this stuff come into your head. Sometimes we can think, well, I wonder if they're going to like me. I wonder if it's going to sound good. I hope I don't screw up. I wonder if I'm going to sound as good as so-and-so or whatever. All this stuff, we can make up all kind of garbage in our head to tell ourselves, and that will build if you allow it to. So, meditation and clearing your head. Real quick though, I want to just revisit, we're talking about the studio here. A lot of our listeners, they're probably not going to a professional studio to record. Some of you might, but the majority of you are probably just going to record in your bedroom where your home studio is. And, Ken had mentioned there's a big difference between composing and writing versus, because, we're doing things, we're composing the song versus, okay, now I'm ready to record the song. And I would venture to say, make sure those two moments are separate. Make sure that when you're in the composing mode and writing mode, that you're in that mode, but have some kind of stopping point to where you say, okay, this is ready to go. Now I'm in the recording mode. I'm not composing anymore. And I only say that, guys, because we can spin that wheel and just get nowhere really, really fast. So now back to the performance part, though. Do you have some tips in your home studio, Elizabeth? Like, because going into the pro studio, we talked about, getting into that mindset, and you would do the same here, but it's a little different in your home studio, though. I mean, what are some challenges there?
Oh, I love this question so much, because like the transformation that my home studio went through just like in the past decade, I feel like I've been in every scenario where I've tried to make the space that was in work somehow and sound good. Now I am fortunate enough to have a really good like isovox vocal booth, and my studio space is treated, but that didn't happen overnight. That took years of just being like, this is what I need. This is, this is good gear. This is not good gear. This is what I need to make my stuff sound good, and being able to afford it, saving up. So I did get to that point, and that took a long time to get there. And I'm really confident in the vocal tracks that I can do in my home studio. But I just get these flashbacks of like when I first started getting into producing my own music at home. I would go into the closet because all my clothes were in there. I would get my SM58 microphone because that's like all, it's a good microphone, but it was the only microphone I had and it was affordable, so I can get it. And I put that in there with my little Focusrite, and I had this mattress. It was like a cot, so it was like a thinner twin size mattress, and I just like shoved it in there with me, and I was like, cool, vocal booth, Nice. So get those mattresses in your closet and make a vocal booth. If you have nothing, just start there, because that creativity really comes in handy when it's time for you to really build a serious space for yourself, because things can get like expensive too. So if you can get creative, like making your own bass tracks, making your own absorption, like all that stuff really does come in handy when it's time for you to build that serious like studio space. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. There's a lot I can say about all of the different types of treatment I've tried throughout the years.
I love what you mentioned, guys, and everybody listening right now, don't obsess over what you don't have. Use what you have, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's absolutely important, because that's many times going to be the limiting factor. It's honestly just yourself that's preventing it from moving forward. So if you have that just focus of saying, this is what I have, and having that just a little creativity, like Elizabeth just mentioned, a little bit of creativity just to get it done. Right. Yeah.
And we have the internet, figure out what people are doing,
Yeah.
Happy them.
And I think a same thing as Jason mentioned before, of separating the moment of when you're saying, okay, I'm in my writing phase or I'm in my recording phase. Those are actually paramount for putting it into your mind that this is going to be the take that you're going to keep. And you have to commit to saying, this is to be the final version of this. Because after a certain point, right, it kind of all gets a little bit foggy, and, you don't really, everything's a blur. You're just like, what is this process? You meld everything together, and it just becomes unclear. And then you just don't know where you kind of stand. So you have to, it takes a little bit of, it's a little bit fearful though, right? Because when you say that, it's like, oh man, I have to commit to saying this is my final take. And it's like, yeah, you do. Because at some point it's got to exit your bedroom and it's got to be out there in the world, right? So you have to say, where is the moment that you just stop and just let it go? Just let it go. That's a big problem. I
mean, like, you can be like, yeah, this is great after the first take, or you can be like, no, I need 100 more takes. And it's okay to have 100 takes. I would recommend knowing how to organize those takes, like understanding how to use a playlist and not having 100 tracks open. That's a whole other thing. But, like, I know, for example, like Billie Eilish, like she has 100 takes of the same like vocal melody, and she'll like put a bunch of them together or splice from like all of those takes to make one perfect take. So figure out your formula. If you want to do it that way, there's no wrong way to do it. Figure out what works for you, and then just stick to that formula,
One thing I'll say real quick for you guitar players out there is when you're writing in the writing phase, and you're the vocalist as well. This is a mistake I made last album. Make sure you can sing and play your songs at the same time if you're going to perform them live. And I say that because a lot of times, because we have this luxury of being in a studio where we can just track our guitars. You may write the rhythms first and get that out there, get that recorded. Then you may go back and write lyrics to that. You're singing along with it. And I did this on my last album, Masterpiece. And there's like 2 parts and 2 songs where I'm like, crap, I'm having a very hard time singing and playing this at the same time. So make sure if you plan to go live with this, which we encourage you to, right? Make sure you can play it and sing it at the same time, because you might have to go back to the drawing board on some things when you start doing that and you find that certain parts are just kind of too hard for you to sing and play at the same time.
Great point. Because now you're thinking about just how your writing affects the live end of this performance. Because we have all this overdubbing technology, and we forget that we actually have to play this at some point for people. So
yeah, but don't let that hold you back either, because I've seen some incidents. I have some students that say, okay, I do all these cool effects when I record it, like I can't perform this live. How do I perform this live? Or if your recording sounds so different from how it would sound if it was just you and your guitar, that's okay. Don't let that hold you back. If you could figure out how to get the same sound over to the stage, go for it if that's what you want. But if you want like an exclusive live acoustic version of the same song, that's pretty cool too. Because some people want to go out and see like, oh, let's see what the live performance of the song sounds like. And it's like, it's something special because it's exclusive for the stage. So if you can't get that exact sound, like, don't let that hold you back. Like, work with it,
Nice. I like what you just mentioned. Like the next project I work on after I finish the one I'm working on now is my goal was to write, a rock and metal album, but also to write the songs in a manner that I can easily have an acoustic version of those. Like some songs I've written, it's kind of difficult to do that. So I kind of want to have, and this is just me personally, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do this, but like I want an album where I've got the album and it's metal, but I've got an acoustic version of every song on that album, or most of them at least. So it's just, that's
so cool. Yeah, I love that. Like, ever see like a punk band do like a kind of like a reggae version of their song? I've seen that a few times. I remember like I used to go see Misfits, and like they like totally slowed down, like back in like when they would perform in BB King's. I forgot what it was, but they slowed down a song completely and like did like kind of like their reggae version of it. I've never heard it in my life, and I just remember that moment being so special because I'm just like, this is like exclusive for the audience now. So that's super cool. It's a good mindset.
Yeah, a lot of bands do that too. One of my favorite bands, Ghost, did a stripped down, unplugged version of their set as well. But I think that's like that's a total organic thing that I respect for. Have a lot of respect for a lot of bands that do that for a small audience, to do like an unplugged version of their acoustic set. And if your set is something that's like big and gargantuan with all these types of sounds, then that takes a little bit more planning to do, and that can be kind of tricky too, right? Because like if we're talking about the other side of the spectrum, getting in like all your samples, because let's say because like me and Elizabeth, we actually create like some symphonic metal type of music. So getting that to be translatable to the live stage will take a lot more planning. And I think you just have to be a little bit more patient. You have to be a little bit more methodical. You have to acquire certain pieces of gear to make that happen. Yeah,
like DAWs and synthesizers, and just gotta like get creative with that.
100%. And that becomes like an entire technical hurdle that has to be accomplished.
I have a question regarding that, and you guys are the perfect ones to answer this, because America's Symphonic Metal, and Elizabeth, I know you do a lot of that as well. Can you get by? We're talking about, okay, here's what's on the CD. Well, now I sound old. The album, because people don't do CDs. Some people listen to CDs still, but here's what's on the album. Yeah, I do too sometimes. Here's what's on the album. But we're going to perform the live version of it. And I always think the live version is going to be a little different anyway. You're going to have some nuances and caveats and things. But can you pull off symphonic metal if you have a keyboard player? Can that keyboard player, maybe with 2 or 3 different keyboards, pull that off without having to play with any tracks or any effects or sound effects that you would have to bring in outside of the band? Is that possible? And would it sound good?
I think.
Go for it, Ken.
My simple answer is it depends on how the song was written with a keyboardist in mind. Because if your intention was that this was going to be played by a keyboardist, those symphonic elements tend to be a little bit more simpler so that a keyboardist can actually do that. Like, for example, Nightwish, they do a lot of this stuff where they'll actually do, kind of segmented orchestral instrumentation where, one section's kind of like highlighting more strings, and then maybe two at a time, if anything, because you'll have two different timbres that you can play with two hands. One's like brass, one's strings, or one's choir and one's strings, or something like that. And that can be a way that they can imbue the two on a live performance. But bands like, Children of Bodom are more specifically like keyboard centric type of sounds that emulate symphonic stuff, but they're not symphonic, like orchestral arrangements per se. A band like Nightwish is much more orchestral first, and then its symphonic keyboards are kind of secondary to that. And most of the time, the keyboard is playing like an actual piano sound and an accompaniment to the orchestral sounds. And side note, I know for a fact Nightwish does play with playback tracks in order to get those sounds out on stage, right? And they imbue that with the keyboardist as they're playing. And, they'll do the things that are live that are like, embellishments and stuff like that to flavor it up and all that good stuff.
I love Nightwish's favorite band. So Ken, do they have like a click track to start the song? Because obviously you have to be in time with that track. So I guess the drummer has a click track in there, or the whole band has it in their in-ears or something like that.
Yeah. So a band like Nightwish would definitely play with in-ears, and you'll have their monitor engineer be someone separate, and you actually have a playback technician who accompanies the monitors and the front of house, purely operates the DAW, and basically it's like, okay, once they receive the signal, they press the play button, and that play button triggers the click track that counts them off into the song.
That's interesting, man. Because again, it's one of my favorite bands. I've seen them live several times. I'm waiting for them to come back to Tampa, Orlando area here soon, I hope, anyway.
Nice.
But thanks for that, man, because I always wondered about that. I know there was some article or video or whatever. I don't remember the name of the band, but their laptops went down, so they couldn't even play the show. And I'm just wondering what bands would do. Obviously, Nightwish has probably got a backup for everything. I don't think that they would ever have that issue, but you're a small band. Let's say you're a small symphonic metal band, and you've got a show, but all of a sudden, okay, your backing tracks, for whatever reason, you have no way to play them. Your laptop goes down, your dog dropped in the water, dog ate it, something like that. What would you do?
This is a great question. Because as you know, I know you guys have known, but for other people who haven't heard about my background, I used to work on Good Morning America, which was
That's right.
all broadcast. And we always had a backup to the artist. So what they would do is many times the artists would bring their own laptop, right? And sometimes they would bring two. But we already know computers are very finicky, and Pro Tools is even more finicky. And that's most of the time the DAW that we're using for a live show. So what we would also do is we would say, okay, that's lovely. We love that you have your own backing track. We want you to give us a bounce and give us a copy so that we have it on our own computer where we're actually recording it. And we're going to have it as a standby play button so that if something goes wrong on your end, we still have a copy that works. So it's, this can be something that you can do very, very simply. There's, you have let's say you have your fully flushed out version on your DAW that you want to set for your live show. That's great. Now also have a separate device that's not just a computer, but there are actual, just let's say devices where it's just a playback device. Yeah. You put in a little flash drive. It has the track, on one end in mono, and the other side is a click track. And so you have your left and right, and you just send that out to your console as a backup, right? So if that goes down, the main playback track system, you have another set device that just says, okay, no worries. Here's a mono source of just everything that we did. Because honestly, in live, you can get away with mono because everything has to come out to the speakers in a way that the entire audience can hear. So mono is a great solution for that. So you have mono for all your orchestral stuff, and the other side is just your click, which only goes to the band. And then there you go. You're all set to go. You're like, no no hiccup at all. Yes, you don't have all the intricacies of, you know, balancing the mix, but would you rather not have a show?
And you have that backup down to a science where it's just like, oh, their stuff went down, lift the fader, and it's like it's smooth, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no freaking out back here. We got you covered.
Yeah, no,
So
because like
professional. Love that.
live sound is the key word to live sound has always been redundancy. So, and this is like, you know, you can, you know, put this into the concept of somebody who's just performing, right, redundantly, right? Just keep practicing until you've got to a point you're so comfortable that you get to on stage and you can execute. But, you know, if you're going to do something that is a little more sophisticated, that needs a more complicated setup because of the style of music that you're playing, well, you need to make sure that you have a backup to the backup so that you can continue to perform.
The same concept of, you know, I play with a wireless, and this is just to simplify everything for everyone listening. I play with a wireless on stage, but if something were to happen and that wireless craps out, well, I can reach over in my bag and I've got a cable, and I actually got more than one cable. So like you said, backup on top of a backup. Guys, I want to switch gears over to who Elizabeth's favorite vocalist is and why.
Okay, cool. I have two that come to mind. Difficult question, obviously, because there's so much out there for different reasons too. But Mike Patton and Devin Townsend have always been two of my favorites.
Nice. Those are awesome.
What are some reasons though behind that? What gets you, like, you know, in hearing their voices or performance or whatever?
I think like it has to be like the first two CDs I ever bought when I had my first car. It just hit me right in the right age at the right time. That point of like freedom, you know. My first two CDs was the Mr. Bungle self-titled album, and then Addicted by Devin Townsend, and I just have it memorized, and also Mudvayne too. That was like a CD. I have that memorized too. Those were like the three CDs I had, and I played them on a loop in my little car back in the day. And there's just something like, you know, for different reasons, like Mike Patton, I just love like his stage persona so much, and he's just so weird, and he inspired me to be like, okay, I'm a musician and I like to try different things. I'm not going to confine myself to one sound. I feel like doing this kind of album. I feel like doing this kind of album. Like every one of his albums, if you ever have like a month where you just go through his whole discography, it's all different types of stuff. And that's what I really like about him, because it inspired me to be like, oh, I like so many different types of music. I'm like a hybrid of many things. I can try different things if I want to, you know. I'm not confined to just being a part of like one band and only doing this like genre for the rest of my life, or do what people like expect from me, quote unquote, because that's not real. You know, I can try different things. So he really inspired me to do that. And I just always really enjoyed his music so much. And his interviews from the 90s are hilarious. And then Devin Townsend, like his stage performance is just like dad jokes. And then he just comes out with these like godly vocals and crazy guitar riffs, and all of his music's very just like euphoric and a huge like inspiration to like the stuff I compose today. So yeah, those are two very important people, musicians in my life.
Devin's amazing. He's kind of like
he's blowing up too, like even more, and I love that for him.
Yeah, and I feel like he's on the fine line of signed artist versus independent artist. He's on the fine line there, but he's really at the pinnacle of what an independent person can really do with their career.
Yeah, he came out with Empath with his own label, and I really see that like blowing up like in the best way for him. Like he's kind of like reaching a point that maybe he's always wanted to reach in his music career. And yeah, it's so cool. I love that album too, Empath. It's so good. I recommend it.
Yeah. And Mike Patton is he's also a record label owner too, right? Yeah, he is. So he's got a lot of kind of a lot of different multifaceted talents around that guy. He's pretty incredible too. Mr. Bungle's an amazing band.
Yeah.
What about you, Jason? What are you into?
Yeah, what's yours?
Wait, like the first thing, because this changes from day to day, right? And you're like, I
Yeah,
love this
same.
today, I love that tomorrow. Of course, I'm a big Nightwish fan, and I love Floor Jansen's vocals, but one of my favorite vocalists that comes to mind is Tony Kakko from Sonata Arctica. He's all over the
Yes.
place. I love his vocals, but he has a lot of personality and character behind his voice as well. You know, you've got a lot of phenomenal vocalists out there, and not taking anything away from anyone, but sometimes they can kind of just sound the same. It's like, okay, you've got a really amazing high voice, high range and all that, but Tony has this unique sound to his vocals, and it's almost like he's telling you a story, but he's got the range and all that good stuff as well. And he's got the accent too. They're a Finnish band. But yeah, I love them. And I love Tom England from Evergreen. He's one of my favorite vocalists as well. His music is just, I don't know, it's just one of a kind. It's almost like he created his own genre with Evergreen.
Wow.
So those are some of my favorites.
When did you, what age were you at when you really got into them? Because I feel like that plays like a role in it too.
It does. And you would think that that's when I got into metal, but you know, remember guys, I'm older. I'll be 48 this month, by the way. So like I grew up with the old Metallica, Satriani, still one of my favorite guitar players. Of course, I love Hetfield's voice, and, you know, Slayer, you know, Dave Mustaine, all those guys. But I got into more of the European metal. It was probably around, I want to say the mid 2000s. One of my close friends introduced me to, I believe it was Sonata Arctica, and I went to see them live. They're here in Tampa. This is, sometime in the mid 2000s. And I really started getting more into bands like Arch Enemy, Monomarth, like I said, Evergrey, Sonata, Nightwish, Delane. And when I saw Nightwish, I was really hooked. I'm like, whoa, Delane opened up for them. And I'd never heard Delane before. And I'm like, okay. So I started digging into them. And it just opened this new world of more of the European metal. And
okay. So it's more introductory to this new genre. The only reason why I ask about like the age thing is because like I noticed that the music that you really like binge like from like your early 20s, like I guess like those years when you're first like really like an adult and you're kind of more free, they really stick with you, or at least they like inspire the music that you you know are into as you get older too. It's kind of like the foundation of the things that you enjoy, you know. So yeah, that's why I asked that. Those are like pivotal years to really.
No, you're right. I still love all the hair bands. So I was into the hair bands, you know, the Metallica, Slayer, but also, you know, Warrant and Def Leppard and all those bands. Bon Jovi. I love Bon Jovi. I mean, I'll admit it.
Bon Jovi.
So,
they're nostalgic to you. Yeah,
there are, you know, and I get why some people might say they're cheesy, but I see a different perspective, I guess. And again, a lot of it just kind of like it's what I was rooted in. So it's funny you asked that though, and that's great because I do love all that stuff, and I still listen to it to this day. Actually, I cover a lot of hair band stuff, even though I have no hair. At my live acoustic shows, I'll do an acoustic version, but the European metal, I find myself kind of writing as I write music is more of a mix between that and then some of that older stuff as well. So it's, you know, we talked about this last week when you were saying how important it is, Ellie, to really find your own style. And we talk about that, Ken. That's what Metal Mastermind is all about, guys. We want you, everybody listening to this right now, we want you to develop your own style and sound. Don't chase someone else's. It's already done. Just find your own and develop your own. So all that said, that kind of comes through the influences that we've had.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Ken?
Good question. I've tend to gravitate towards more prog on this side of the spectrum when it comes to vocalists. I think one of my favorite is Neil Morse, to be honest.
Yeah, Neil Morse is so good.
I love Neil Morse. Yeah, a very musical vocalist. He's got he does a lot of Christian rock, right? He does do a lot of Christian rock, and I'm not necessarily a hardcore Christian at all. I'm more agnostic than anything else, but it's just I love the tonal timbre and control of his voice. I think he's very easy to listen to, and you know you can kind of be swallowed up in his technique. But another person that I like to listen to is also Simone Simmons from Epica. She's very, very operatic, you know, sort of like soaring type of vocals. And she's got like perfect technique because she's like an opera singer and all this kind of stuff. So it's easy to just like be wowed. And I think in terms of, even like heavier type of vocals, I'm a big fan of, I don't know his name off the top of my head, but I really love the vocalist from Amorphous.
Yes, dude.
He has like this like really like hard hitting like growl type of vocals that just like kind of hit you in the gut. I don't know if it's necessarily guttural, but it's just like it's very deep and it's very, very forward, but very controlled. It's kind of similar to the singer from Opeth. Yeah, he's another great vocalist who also has like this dynamic talent of being able to growl and also sing like these beautiful melodic melodies.
That's so cool.
This is why I love the workbook in my course that like really makes you talk about the music that like inspires you, because it's, first of all, it's just so fun to talk about. Like I just see your eyes light up when you talk about like, the style of vocals. It's like a fun conversation. You can really figure out what you like and what makes up the music that you create from your inspirations, It's its own podcast too. I can go, there's like 10 other musicians in my head now when I think about it.
Hey, we can do this again as well.
Like a whole segment, yeah.
So speaking of your course, real quick, so Metal Vocal Virtuoso, guys, that is on metalmastermind.com. Go to the website metalmastermind.com. Click on courses and you'll see all of our courses, but scroll down and find Metal Vocal Virtuoso. That course is out there. It has helped so many other vocalists not only get better at singing, but really find their own voice. And like we said before, guys, this is what this is all about. It's all about helping you develop your own style and be your absolute best. And Elizabeth, you do a phenomenal job of doing that in that course.
Thank you. So
head over there. And Elizabeth, you do coaching on Metal Mastermind as well. So that's an option too.
The coaching goes hand in hand with the course, I think. I really want to like see you guys, get to know you and figure out where you're at, purchasing the course, and, just want to meet you guys and help you out along the way as much as I can. So the coaching is where to do that for sure.
Yeah, coaching is very much kind of this ongoing learning. So if you're like at a point where you've kind of taken the course, or if you haven't taken the course, but you're like, I still feel like I need something that's a little more tailored to specifically what you're trying to do. That like makes perfect sense.
Yeah, anything. It definitely makes the whole experience a lot more one-on-one and personal for sure.
Yeah.
So guys, head over to metalmastermind.com, grab Elizabeth's course, Metal Vocal Virtuoso. And again, she also does one-on-one lessons as well. My personal take, I like the idea of getting the course and going through those basics and then scheduling a call with Elizabeth and getting on her calendar. Because then you've kind of got some of the foundation. So when you meet, maybe you're a little bit further ahead, right?
Yeah, exactly. Really figure out, I need more improvement with this, and making note of it, and then we can kind of chat about it. Whatever it is that you think you need, I'm here for you.
That's perfect. Well, Ellie, thank you so much for being on. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. And guys, until the next episode, thank you, by the way, for being a part of Metal Mastermind. All of you listening right now, we appreciate that. Until the next episode, remember to always create your own sound.